In Florida, a storm named Andrew has rearranged or wiped away lifetimes of work and savings. And as thousands of people began the overwhelming task of cleaning up, thousands more along the Gulf Coast prepare for the worst and wonder, are we next?
This is CNN's Prime News with Bernard Shaw in Washington and Sharyl Attkisson sitting in for Susan Rook at the CNN Center in Atlanta.
Thanks for joining us. Along a wide swath of southern Florida, this is the beginning of a night without light and power, a night without clean water. For many, a night without a home. As this day began, Hurricane Andrew crashed into the South Florida coast. Sustained winds were 140 miles an hour. One wind gust was measured at 164 miles an hour. In the storm's wake, at least 8 people are dead. The damage is estimated to be in the billions of dollars. 3 counties have been declared disaster areas. The pictures of buildings splintered and cracked open by the storm convey more than words can ever tell. But the story of Hurricane Andrew is far from over. In cities and towns along the coasts of Louisiana and Mississippi, people are buying supplies or trying to get away. The hurricane is gaining strength and spinning westward in the Gulf of Mexico. Now let's get an update on Hurricane Andrew's path and strength from CNN's Karen McGinnis.
Thank you, Bernie. And yes, this storm is definitely not over. We have a graphic to show you where we anticipate the probable or possible landfall of Hurricane Andrew. From Vermilion Bay, and as you can see, it's well to the west of New Orleans. Here's New Orleans, here is Vermilion Bay, which encompasses a good portion of the New Orleans or the Louisiana coast, all the way over to Pascagoula, Mississippi, and that does extend over to Mobile, Alabama, the hurricane watch, and then back over to the Sabine Pass area of Texas. But it has been fairly consistent within this Vermilion Bay as well as the Pascagoula, Mississippi area. All day long, the National Hurricane Center has said this looks pretty good for things in the surface of the atmosphere and the upper levels of the atmosphere. Also conditions in the Gulf of Mexico, and that does include the extraordinarily warm water for this time of year. Let's give you the latest coordinates, and these are the very latest as of 8 p.m. They have just been updated. 26.1 degrees north, 84.9 degrees west. It is moving towards the west. Now, this is kind of a key issue here, and that is they're fairly sure at the National Hurricane Center that this will be steered a little bit more towards the west and then towards the northwest. So perhaps sometime this evening or during the early morning hours, and I'll certainly be here, we can update you on how this storm is going to change. But the winds now still at 140 miles an hour, but you have to remember this is a ripe zone for this hurricane to, in fact, gain more strength, and they mentioned that in the last advisory as of 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Let's show you those satellite pictures as Hurricane Andrew moved across the Bahamas, then across southern Florida. Look at this last picture. We'll run it again, and you can see just how clear the center of that storm is. And as it winds up, that lets you know just how fierce this storm system is. Now, don't be passive if you live along the Gulf Coast areas. You should be taking stock now. There are, in fact, some evacuations planned for some coastal counties in Mississippi. And if an evacuation order is issued, you would probably be advised to heed those orders as they were in southern Florida. Now, here's the projected path. As you can see, the storm system is now just about 410 miles to the southeast of New Orleans, Louisiana. And according to the National Hurricane Center, they put models together. They see what is in the atmosphere next to this system. They see what is in the atmosphere at the surface in the Gulf of Mexico. And we have coordinated that track and plotted it. And that does put it just to the west of the New Orleans area. And you have to remember, it doesn't take much rainfall for this area to flood. And you get a storm surge. And this could be devastating once again. So the deadly path of Hurricane Andrew just does not stop. But we'll be here in just about another 25 minutes to give you another update. Cheryl?
All right, Karen, the worst in nature sometimes brings out the worst in people. Looters have tried to help themselves to scattered pieces of homes and businesses. But it can also bring out the best in people. Friends have come to help the victims of the storm. For these parts of the story, as well as more on the aftermath, we go live to CNN's Charles Jaco in Cutler Ridge, Florida. Charles?
Well, good evening from Cutler Ridge. Cutler Ridge is the kind of neighborhood people usually don't pay a lot of attention to unless something happens. Something definitely happened here. Hurricane Andrew blew through. The area was devastated. Also south of here, Homestead, home to one of the largest U.S. Air Force bases in the world. And we can report now that according to Tony Reardon of the Florida Department of Community Affairs, quote, Homestead Air Force Base no longer exists. According to a military spokesman, every building at Homestead Air Force Base has been destroyed. Now, moments ago in the shopping center where I'm standing in Cutler Ridge, Florida, there was a surprise visitor. President George Bush showed up in a motorcade surrounded by federal officials and Secret Service agents and a mob of media. Several local people tried to get close enough to the president to talk to him. We're unsure if they were successful or not. The president flew in to talk about federal disaster aid for this devastated area and talk about the plans for rebuilding and what could possibly be done. Now, ironically, we had just come back to the shopping center from seeing some mild looting going on nearby here. As CNN's John Zarella reports, there has been some, but not a lot of looting in this area.
As Andrew left South Florida, the looters arrived. The National Guard subduing and arresting several looters, at least one in this dramatic scene carrying a gun.
Take the gun. Get the gun out of there. Get the gun away. Hey.
About 100 guardsmen came to this one area of South Dade County called Cutler Ridge. But by the time they arrived, dozens of people had already torn through stores in this heavily damaged shopping center. Many looters simply ran off carrying the goods. Others backed their cars up to the store and loaded up. Many buildings around this shopping center were destroyed too. The devastation in South Dade, where the eye of the storm barreled across, brought tears as families reunited and assessed the damage. At Miami International Airport, a 727 jet was nose down in the water on a taxiway. A little further south, a tow truck hauled a chunk of expressway sign superstructure down the highway. The scenes of destruction here are widespread, and the losses appear substantial. John Zarella, CNN, in South Dade County.
Now, what's ironic about all this is we were always told that the areas near the coast, right on the coast, the barrier islands, were the most dangerous areas. It turns out in this storm, though, that most of the damage was done inland. Here we've got a map to show you roughly where the Cutler Ridge area is and where the town of Homestead, Florida is. They're not a great distance from the ocean, but then nothing in Florida is a great distance from the ocean, but they are not right on the coast. These areas were absolutely devastated because the eye of the hurricane passed right through here. The tremendous destruction from the front end and the backside of the eye wall reduced dozens of square miles to absolute rubble. The worst destruction was in Homestead, and CNN's Bonnie Anderson has more on that.
At dawn, the road from Miami south to Homestead was a scene of increasing devastation. In Perrine, 150 patients at a nursing home wandered about in mud-soaked debris. The front side of the facility destroyed. On either side of the southbound highway, businesses with caved-in roofs, broken windows, collapsed walls. Looters searched the stores for whatever bounty they could find. In the small town of Naranja, firefighters treated the injured. This man had a severe gash in his neck. Fire rescue officials feared he might not make it to a hospital in time. Several migrant families left homeless by the hurricane asked for help, but there was not enough room, not enough food, not enough water. A mile away, Homestead residents surveying the damage were stunned by what they saw. The city manager estimates 90% of the city was severely damaged, a scene that shook even the strongest.
I've been in Homestead now 15 years, 10 as city manager, and you see these pictures on TV. And you really, we've worked so hard in this community to build what we got. 12 years of my life. Gone? Not gone, we just got to start over.
Among the worst devastation was at Homestead's 5 trailer camps. This one had 400 mobile homes before Andrew. Now only the shells of 4 or 5 remain, leaving many residents wandering the streets for shelter.
We can't find any place to go. And we had to move out of our trailer park.
Have you been by there?
Oh, yes, it's a wreck. There's nothing left.
Well, we were talking about live people, too. Let's use 2 or 3 dogs per trailer park and just do them first and cover all the major trailer parks.
Unable to physically search the city for possible injured residents, police used the only working phone line to call for search dogs. But they admit it could be days before the city is properly canvassed, before they have a final tally on the dead and injured. 32 police officers from Charleston, South Carolina, a team trained in disaster relief, is arriving to help with that gruesome task. Bonnie Anderson, CNN, Homestead, Florida.
Now, according to the latest estimates we have, approximately 1.3 million people in the Fort Lauderdale and Miami area no longer have electricity. There's no running water in many places. There's an advisory out in all of Dade County, which is the Miami area, to boil water for at least 8 minutes before you drink it because water pressure keeps dropping and rising, bursting the pipes and therefore creating sanitation problems. The recovery process could take weeks, if not months. Power officials say it could be several weeks before electricity is restored in the homes that are still standing. From other hurricanes we've seen, the storm and the winds and the rain are horrible, but the recovery process is like a long, slow, lingering illness that just seems to go on forever. Charles Jaco, CNN, reporting live from Cutler Ridge.
Charles, I saw Connie Mack walking around with the president and some other state politicians. How was their visit received?
Well, on family television, I don't suppose I could tell you what a couple of people told me. Suffice it to say that a lot of the residents of this largely black, largely working class area around Cutler Ridge were less than impressed with the president showing up. Of course, anybody would be grateful for any aid they could get after a disaster like this, but a lot of people around here told me that they thought it was a political scam.
You covered Hurricane Hugo. Can you compare the damage for us then and now?
Hurricane Hugo in San Juan and St. Croix, where I was, the devastation looked about the same. It was hard to believe. In fact, you were driving through part of the United States as we were driving down here on the Florida Turnpike. Mile after mile after mile of wooden frame houses completely gutted and destroyed. It looked like they'd been the victims of heavy artillery bombardment. The devastation looks like it's about the same. The death toll, thankfully, seems to be much, much lower than it was in Hugo. We're going to have to see what the dollar amount in damage is and how long it's going to take people around here to recover.
We will keep tabs. Thank you. CNN's Charles Jaco from Cutler Ridge, Florida. Bernie?
Cheryl, still to come, help is on the way for the victims of Hurricane Andrew, and we'll keep you updated on the hurricane as Prime News continues. The victims of Hurricane Hugo, the 9th worst Atlantic hurricane of the past 2 decades, know firsthand the devastation of such a storm. Just as it was helped in 1989, the residents of Charleston are extending their hands and opening their pocketbooks to Andrew's victims. They're packing supplies, and some are even heading south to help. The Red Cross is asking for monetary donations so that help can be funneled to Florida and the Gulf Coast, where Andrew is expected to hit next.
The pipeline of aid includes assistance from the federal government. For those who are qualified, the government's plan to help is already underway. More from CNN's Candy Crowley.
What Mother Nature destroys, it is human nature to rebuild.
We've worked so hard in this community to build what we got. It's 12 years of my life.
Gone?
Not gone, we just got to start over. Never gone, there's always tomorrow.
In Washington, they began to think about tomorrow 3 years ago, when federal relief efforts following Hurricane Hugo were criticized as too little and too late. Early out of the gate this time, 2 teams from the Federal Emergency Management Agency headed south Friday as Andrew brewed in the Atlantic. 5 hours after the storm came ashore, FEMA's director was en route as well, promising that Andrew will not be Hugo.
One of the big differences between this storm and Hugo, for instance, is the amount of preparation that has gone on before the storm hit. In the second place is our federal response plan was developed after Hugo to precisely deal with the issues that were raised in Hugo.
Set up to provide relief after local and state money is gone, FEMA coordinates a variety of federal programs. Individuals who meet the criteria can receive grants of up to $11,500 to help with disaster-related expenses, low-interest loans from the Small Business Administration, and temporary housing. Federal tax dollars also foot up to 75% of the tab to help clear and rebuild public roads and schools. First things first, though, and FEMA's immediate concern is public safety and health following the storm.
When you lose your power, you lose water, you lose your sewage systems, you lose many of your emergency response elements that are impeded at that point in time, and we worry considerably about that.
With parts of Florida in shambles and other parts of the U.S. now threatened, FEMA's new structure faces the acid test. Andrew, say officials, is shaping up as one of the worst hurricanes to hit the U.S. this century. Candy Crowley, CNN, Washington.
President Bush reveals his idea for training laid-off workers, but doesn't say exactly how he'll pay for it. That's ahead on Prime News. Also, the new round of Mideast peace talks begins, and the participants say something could actually happen.
Another rough day on Wall Street. Blue chip stocks tumbled another 26 points, chiefly because the value of the U.S. dollar is shrinking. International investors are moving money from dollars to German marks, which have higher interest rates. Today, the dollar fell to its lowest point against the German mark since that currency was created after World War II. And some analysts are saying the dollar could fall further. While a weak dollar could help U.S. exports, some investors worry that it also could raise inflation. Because of the weak dollar, economists believe the Federal Reserve will not lower interest rates again anytime soon.
President Bush is asking for a government training program that, in his words, would get everybody engaged in high-tech jobs. But he didn't say exactly how he'd pay for it. And the Clinton campaign says the president stole the idea anyway. CNN's John Holliman reports.
President Bush says his administration can afford to spend $3 billion a year for 5 years to guarantee job training for Americans.
This is a new national commitment to job training that I'm unveiling today. A program that is bold, it is innovative, and it is loyal only to the future and to the needs of the American workers.
The administration proposal would give all dislocated workers training support and assistance. The centerpiece of the program is vouchers of up to $3,000 a year to pay for college or technical school training for people whose jobs have been eliminated or whose jobs are about to be lost. Bush says he'll also beef up the Job Corps program, changing the name to the Youth Training Corps and providing training to 43,000 young people who are today at risk.
The program is aimed at young people, primarily in our inner cities, kids with talent, kids with ambition, with no outlets for their abilities other than a life of drugs and crime.
The Democrats charge Bush is copying a Clinton plan for job training and apprenticeships for young people and say there's no way to pay for the Bush plan.
The specifics that he recommended are very much like what we tried to do here and very much like what I have specifically recommended for the country. And the problem is he can't pay for his because he wants an across-the-board tax cut.
Republicans say their plan would be paid for by cutting other domestic spending programs and charge the Democrats would raise taxes to finance their proposal.
Campaign officials say they hope the plan will counter criticism the president has been ignoring the rising U.S. unemployment rate. The officials also say they hope this program will blunt complaints that a new free trade agreement with Canada and Mexico could cost the American workforce even more jobs. John Holliman, CNN, Ansonia, Connecticut.
Clinton himself today also got in shots at the president's training plan. He suggests it's not a serious proposal.
The specifics that he recommended are very much like what we tried to do here and very much like what I have specifically recommended for the country. And the problem is he can't pay for his because he wants an across-the-board tax cut. He just got through telling us at the convention we were going to have a huge tax cut paid for by huge spending cuts and amounts to be unspecified, and now he's come out with new spending programs. So I think it's very difficult to take this seriously.
Clinton appeared in Little Rock with a former rival, Democrat Paul Tsongas. Tsongas said the president is only offering 4 more years of economic finger-pointing.
You've got 2 candidates running for president, one of whom says, here is my plan, we'll work with the Democratic Congress, hold us responsible. The other one gets up with nonsense that I think it goes beyond any reasonable boundary, not only of good economics, but I think generational morality.
Tsongas also says the president is giving up on any serious action about the deficit.
Coming up on Prime News, expressions of optimism as Arabs and Israelis continue their search for peace. And Sarajevo withers under attack as peace talks are set to begin.
The prospect of peace talks to end the fighting in Bosnia-Herzegovina has done nothing to blunt the ferocious hostilities. Casualties have been heavy in Sarajevo this week. Each side reportedly wants a firm hold on its territory before peace talks start Wednesday in London. Tomorrow, the UN General Assembly votes on a non-binding resolution that condemns the practice of ethnic cleansing in Bosnia. Although the resolution faults all the factions, it is particularly critical of the Serbs.
High hopes tempered by experience. With those words, the head of Israeli delegation entered the sixth round of Middle East peace talks being held here in Washington. The Israelis, under the new leadership of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, have brought some new proposals to the table. Negotiators reportedly have new plans for Palestinian self-rule, and they have proposed granting Syria some territorial concessions. Lebanon's parliamentary speaker has resigned following the country's first elections in 20 years. Hussein Husseini resigned, charging the elections in his district were rigged by pro-Iranian fundamentalists. The fundamentalist members of Hezbollah celebrated the unofficial returns, which show they have won several parliamentary seats. The voting is taking place during 3 consecutive Sundays.
Brazil's president inched another step closer to impeachment proceedings today. President Fernando Collor de Mello campaigned as a crusader against corruption, but today a congressional panel accused him of abusing his office for financial gain. The panel has been investigating corruption within the Collor government for 3 months. The panel's report accuses the president of overlooking an enormous network of bribery and influence peddling set up by his campaign treasurer. Members of Mr. Collor's family are also accused of getting kickbacks. Relief officials in Africa say the flow of refugees fleeing Somalia has slowed now that relief has started to reach some of those who are near starvation. UN officials in Somalia say food is still desperately needed in remote areas of the country, but they warn they might not be able to protect the food from armed bandits in more isolated areas. Leaders of Somalia's feuding factions have allowed international troops to guard the distribution of relief in the capital city of Mogadishu.
Canadian police say a professor at Montreal's Concordia University opened fire on campus today, killing 2 people and wounding 3 others. Police arrested the man shortly after the shooting, but they haven't released his name. Reportedly, the professor was angry about the possibility that he could lose his job. Witnesses reported seeing him right after the attack, walking across campus, quote, like a robot, holding a gun in front of him.
When Prime News continues, we'll have an update on the tremendous damage caused by Hurricane Andrew. Karen?
And Cheryl, I'll have the latest information, including coordinates for Hurricane Andrew as it moves into the Gulf of Mexico, as CNN's Prime News continues.
Updating our top story, for the first time in a generation, the Miami, Florida area has taken a direct hit from a major hurricane. Hurricane Andrew stormed ashore this morning with sustained winds of 140 miles an hour and wind gusts of up to 164 miles an hour. As a result, much of southern Florida is in shambles. At least 8 people are dead. The damage is estimated to be in the billions. Nearly 1.5 million people are without electricity. The National Guard is trying to keep looters away. 3 counties have been declared disaster areas. And Andrew isn't finished. As the still dangerous storm swirls in the Gulf of Mexico, people from Mississippi to Louisiana are stocking up on emergency supplies. Officials have ordered evacuations.
The city of New Orleans is declaring a state of emergency for the city immediately. We are ordering the evacuation of all lower-lying areas outside of the levee districts in New Orleans East and Lower Algiers. And we are encouraging those citizens of the entire city who can evacuate to evacuate on a voluntary basis at this time.
For the latest on Hurricane Andrew now, here's Karen McInnes.
You know, Cheryl, one of the interesting things about Hurricane Andrew is it was moving so swiftly. Unlike some other hurricanes, i.e. Hurricane Hugo, it slowed down when it got in the warm waters of the Gulf Stream and just spun around there for a while, picked up a little bit of speed. But with Hurricane Andrew, it made a very deliberate path across the Bahama Islands, claimed 4 lives so far there, about 12 lives so far. These figures are going to change as it moved across south central Florida and through Dade and Broward County. Here's the latest satellite picture, and the eye of the storm is clearly defined, and this has forecasters scared when they see something like this. But the coordinates are, as of 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 26.1 degrees north, 84.9 degrees west, or just over 400 miles to the southeast of New Orleans. Now, we do have a hurricane warning. Now, that is the most severe, as opposed to a watch, where they're looking at the potential for this hurricane to make landfall from Vermilion Bay, which, as you can see, is pretty far to the west of New Orleans, all the way over to Pascagoula. Now, Mobile and Sabine Pass incorporate the hurricane watches for the Gulf Coast region. Let's show you the satellite images, and you can see this storm just did not give up. It moved across land. Usually they break up a little bit, but take a look at the last image. You can see the eye of the storm very, very clearly here. It's now supporting winds of 140 miles per hour, but it's in the warm Gulf waters, and this is prime territory for a storm system like this to, in fact, intensify. There's nothing going on at the surface for Hurricane Andrew. There's nothing to slow it down, so it's going to be on a deliberate path. Although it's not going to be going so much more west. As a matter of fact, we anticipate it's going to be veering towards the north-northwest. And in fact, there's a weak ridge of high pressure over the northeastern corner of Texas, and that, in fact, will cause it to deflect to end towards the north-central Gulf of Mexico. And then we're looking at this frontal system perhaps to later on just kind of push it along the southeast, the remnants of it's not going to be a hurricane at that point. Let's talk about the projected path, and sort of like the probability map. What the National Hurricane Center has done is they looked at conditions at the surface in the upper atmosphere, what's going on in the Gulf of Mexico. They kind of plotted a course, and this can change. But the news is it really hasn't changed that much. So they're sticking with this plan, so that means they must be pretty sure or fairly certain that Hurricane Andrew may make its track just to the west of New Orleans, but that doesn't mean everyone else should ignore the evacuations if they, in fact, should occur for your area. I'll have more. CNN's Prime News continues now with Bernie.
Thank you, Karen. A few things for you to remember about preparing for hurricanes. Stay away from low-lying areas and mobile homes. Make sure you get windows boarded up, store plenty of drinking water, and keep the car gassed up. Be ready to leave if the evacuation order comes, and make sure all batteries are in working order. The effects of Hurricane Andrew can be seen on almost any street corner in South Florida. Here's a look at what this furious storm has done.
This is the backside of Hurricane Andrew, a tremendously powerful storm that has come ashore here in Miami.
Hey, we had power up until about an hour ago, and they've lost the sign across the street and a flagpole and some palm trees, but just some minor leaking.
What about gusts? Still 145, right? Gusts are still 145? Overnight, we saw huge explosions, just like I recall seeing in Hugo, in the distance from Charleston, which was in the distance, just the transformers exploding. And we could see those standing here looking to the east over to Miami Beach.
Even though the eye is now past, the conditions are still horrible here in Boca Raton, which is about 40 miles north of Miami. The winds are still very heavy. The rain is driving. We're about 100 yards away from the beach right now. The salt water's kind of blowing in our eyes right now and blowing us around a little bit, so you'll have to excuse us if we move around a bit.
city stores, just running in and out with all the clothes and everything.
Stop fighting. Stop fighting. Stop.
Let me go.
No.
Stop
it.
503, 503. We need to
stop.
Hey, let me go, man.
There's 5 trailer parks. Every single one of them, we have over 3,000 people live in trailer parks, have been wiped out.
Flattened.
Flattened.
It's a wreck. There's nothing left. Our trailer is splinters.
And now you have no place to stay.
No place to stay.
This must be, personally...
You know, it's, I've been in Homestead now 15 years, 10 as city manager, and you see these pictures on TV. And you really, we've worked so hard in this community to build what we got. It's 12 years of my life.
Gone.
Not gone, we just got to start over. Never gone, there's always tomorrow.
Coming up next on Prime News, is the nation's clean air law holding up to high hopes? We'll have a report. Flames have won today's battle between thousands of firefighters and a California forest fire. The fire has broken through defenses on at least 2 fronts, threatening hundreds of homes in Shasta County. In 5 days, the fire has burned more than 300 homes and enough timber to build 50,000 houses. Other wildfires continue to burn in Oregon, Utah, and Idaho. There, just east of Boise, firefighters are winning, thanks to some cooperation from nature. Cooler temperatures, higher humidity, and some rain helped to slow flames over the weekend.
Jordan's King Hussein is expected to make a full recovery after surgery last week. He is being treated at the Mayo Clinic, where doctors removed his left kidney and ureter after finding malignant cancer cells. Doctors say the cancer had not spread. The 57-year-old monarch is expected to remain in the hospital through the end of the week.
Affordable health care has become a hot political issue in the U.S. presidential race. Some nations that have free national health care find it's not easy to maintain such a program. Tonight, CNN medical correspondent Andrew Holtz begins a look at Italy's approach to health care for all.
More than a decade ago, Italy declared that all its citizens have a right to health care. No one is turned away for lack of money.
In Italy, citizens should be able to get full services on a large scale and in all fields, from general medicine to hospitals and drugs.
Italy used Britain's National Health Service as a model. With health care paid for by tax revenues, there's no fear of losing insurance coverage or life savings.
Nobody is worrying about changing jobs. Nobody is worrying about inability to provide care to their children. Nobody is worried about a gap between early retirement and when Medicare, when they turn 65, for example, as they are in the United States.
Another difference between Italian and U.S. medical care is quickly apparent in a visit to a new intensive care unit in a Rome public hospital. The doctor in charge says this is the most advanced patient monitoring available. But the high-tech monitoring systems so proudly displayed are common in U.S. hospitals. Ambulances deliver their patients to the emergency admitting area on the other side of this hospital campus. In the U.S., emergency room doctors often are briefed via radio by ambulance crews, so they're ready when the patient arrives. But here, there is no direct communication, no central dispatch center for ambulances. A doctor here says he foresees a trauma center for seriously injured people and critically ill people with monitoring labs and more beds.
The reports that I've seen from Italian analysts suggest that they are not satisfied with the quality of their care. They're not satisfied with the quality of their medical school training.
Some 20% of Italians have private health coverage that provides certain specialized care faster than the public system.
There are problems and complaints here. But that does not necessarily mean Italians want any sort of American-style, largely private healthcare system.
Some problems are blamed on tight budgets.
The financial resources of Italy
one of the 7 most industrialized countries in the world, are lacking.
Italy spends about 6% of its gross domestic product on health care. That's only half the U.S. rate. Health care is no longer entirely free for Italians. Patients must now pay cash for certain diagnostic services. Other reform proposals focus on the way Italian health care is managed. More on that in our next report. Andrew Holtz, CNN Medical News, Rome.
Two years ago, Congress passed a tough new law to fight air pollution. In our Earth Matters segment, CNN Sean Caleb's looks at whether the law is helping to clear the skies.
Summer's unrelenting heat. At times, it appears the sun can barely burn its way through filthy skies. November 1990, final approval of the Clean Air Act. The president heralded the legislation, a landmark breakthrough, the cornerstone of his environmental record.
But what's happened to the act 2 years after the grandiose announcement? Critics say it's been watered down, chiefly by the Bush administration. But others say the measure is still in its infancy, and its full effect won't be felt for years.
Even critics are quick to admit that the act has many strong points. It was a legislative breakthrough that took a decade to hammer out. It requires use of cleaner, alternative fuels in American cities with the worst air pollution. Ozone-depleting CFCs, as of this July, must be recycled instead of released into the atmosphere. And the most elusive and voluminous source of the nation's air pollution, the automobile, faces an aggressive emission testing program.
Well, it's not politically correct to acknowledge it, but we've made tremendous progress in the last 20 years in the United States on the environment.
The most innovative part of the law deals with acid rain, but critics say even it is not without flaws. Sulfur emissions from coal-burning plants are the major source of acid rain. They pump more than 16 million tons of sulfur dioxide into the air each year. The Clean Air Act mandates that amount must be reduced by nearly half by the year 2000. There is an incentive for plants to go beyond the EPA's requirement. Each unit of clean air beyond the federal target equals a pollution credit, which can then be sold to other utilities the same way stocks are traded.
The intent of the law is to get as much emission reduction in the United States as we can achieve.
The Tennessee Valley Authority was one of the first agencies to buy credits. Environmentalists now charge the EPA weakened this provision of the Clean Air Act last month by allowing electric power plants in high-growth areas of the South and Midwest higher emission levels.
Now these acid rain trades could actually wind up making air quality worse in some places, and people should be concerned with that, and they should object to it.
All these changes to curb pollutants will cost utility giants.
TVA will spend something like $850 million between 1991 and 1995 to meet those requirements. That will eventually be reflected in the price that the customer will pay for electricity.
Above all, critics fear faulty implementation of the law, and they charge that at the heart of the Clean Air Act's undermining is a council overseen by Dan Quayle. The Council on Competitiveness is an industry-friendly group accused of putting profits ahead of the environment.
It's really a shame that you have the Congress responding to the public demand for clean air and the administration taking political credit for signing the Clean Air into law, the Clean Air Bill into law. And then once the ink is dry, they go into the back rooms and they basically go into a stall and go into a weakening program.
Environmentalists are outraged that the council pushed through a rule that allows companies to increase toxic emissions without notifying the public. Several groups have filed suit to reverse this measure. Other groups are threatening to sue over the 50 deadlines the EPA has not met in implementing the Clean Air Act. 2 years ago, it was heralded as a breath of fresh air. But now many argue it is far too early to breathe a sigh of relief over the nation's Clean Air Act. Sean Caleb, CNN, reporting.
Nick Charles joins us now with the latest in the sports world. Nick?
And the subject is money. Cal Ripken of the Orioles celebrated his 32nd birthday today in style. He signed a new contract worth practically $1 million for every birthday candle. Ripken's been an Oriole since his entire career, and the team made sure he'll stay that way when they signed him to a 5-year deal worth $6.1 million a season, and then threw in a $2 million retirement bonus. Total package, $32.5 million. Well, Stefan Edberg's been struggling all year to rediscover his lethal tennis game and his confidence. And today he found them both and beat Mal Washington to win the Volvo International Tournament in New Haven. With the U.S. Open just a week away, everybody's trying to get their game in top shape. Edberg in the far court said he was just in a zone and had everything clicking. But here, when he took command at the net, Washington found the opening and blew a passing shot by to take a 5-4 lead. And the set went to a tiebreaker. Washington charged to a 3-0 lead. Edberg, though, used his speed, accuracy, and strong net play to battle back and win the set. And he picked it up another notch in the second set. And even when he was forced to cover the whole court, the Swede had all the solutions. The rest was easy. The key, though, his gutty comeback in the tiebreaker and relentless pressure the rest of the way to win it in straight sets. Well, the high-pressure world of the PGA Golf Tour got a lot less than serious today at the annual Fred Meyer Invitational Bash near Portland, Oregon, where anything goes.
We can do anything we want to out here. It's the Fred Meyer Challenge.
Well, Fuzzy, you can do anything you want, like here from 70 yards out on your approach. Just drop it on the green and watch it roll into the cup. That's a birdie the hard way. Anything goes at the Fred Meyer Challenge. Like, look at the man on the left. He is a mountain of a guy here. That's Craig Stadler and Payne Stewart in knickers. Partners, matching attire. John Daly obviously didn't like that fashion statement. And then Greg Norman in the drink here.
Look now, how far behind he hits down in.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff I could relate to. But anyway, it's on the green, and then Norman takes after Steve Elkington, who tried to drop him in the drink. Like we said, anything goes. It's the Fred Meyer Challenge. Just loads of fun there in Portland. And Davis Love the third on 16. This all serious. His 10-foot birdie put him, at that time, his team of Fred Couples and himself into a tie for the lead at 8 under. Who is Fred Meyer, you ask? We'll tell you tomorrow night. Actually, he is a furniture magnate, I believe, in Portland, Oregon, who holds his own tournament and invites the best of the best. That's sports for now. We'll see you with a full half hour on CNN Sports tonight at 11 o'clock Eastern Time. But the news continues now with Sharyl Attkisson.
Nick, thank you. Next, Woody and Mia try one more time to settle out of court. We'll tell you what happened.
Woody, when's the next movie?
A judge has barred television cameras from the courtroom during tomorrow's custody hearing between Woody Allen and Mia Farrow. Over the weekend, the two reportedly failed to reach an out-of-court settlement. The judge reserved decision on the larger question of whether to hold the whole hearing behind closed doors. Allen is suing for custody of the couple's 3 children. He has also admitted to having an affair with Farrow's adopted adult child, whom he helped raise from childhood.
Updating tonight's top story for you, residents from Alabama to Texas are bracing for Hurricane Andrew's next rendezvous with land. Forecasters say if Andrew remains on its present track, it could hit Grand Isle, Louisiana around midnight Tuesday. Right now, Andrew is some 400 miles southeast of New Orleans. The National Weather Service has issued a hurricane warning for a 290-mile stretch of coast from Pascagoula, Mississippi to Vermilion Bay, Louisiana. Andrew has painful history in South Florida now. The storm has claimed at least 8 lives there and left devastation in its wake across 3 counties. President Bush declared parts of the state disaster areas, and he toured some hard-hit areas late this afternoon. Damage estimates range as high as $8 billion. Adding to South Florida's nightmare, looters quickly went to work. Hundreds of National Guardsmen have been called out to keep order, and we will keep you updated throughout the evening. That's all for this edition of Prime News. Thanks for joining us in Washington. I'm Bernard Shaw. Good night, Cheryl.
Bernie, at the CNN Center, I'm Sharyl Attkisson. Larry King Live is next. Larry, what's in store?
Thanks, Cheryl. We're in New York tonight. We'll get you an update, of course, on the activities of Hurricane Andrew, and then meet our special guest for most of the hour, Bill Cosby in person. Don't go away. We're next. Larry King Live on CNN.